Yeah, that's exactly what I was. So if you go
You
to
go to
react,
more.
Miss Renu,
yeah,
get ready.
More.
go to
Yeah.
reactions
We're
and then
streaming live. We are live, yes.
Oh, okay.
So we start.
Hello, everyone. Good afternoon, and welcome to Voices being brought to you by Radio Zindagi and myself, the host, Renu Dillon from Genius Kids and Win with Words. Thank you all for tuning in. This is my favorite time of the week where we bring conversations for the community and by the community. And we wish and hope that all of you will join in. We're being streamed live on Facebook. In addition to that, you can also call in to the studio number to share your questions or your views or post them, of course, on Facebook. Our number is 510-657-1170. Without any further ado, let me introduce the topic for today. And excuse me if I'm going to be jumping back and forth from windows. I'm actually ready to go to the beach after this call today. I'm taking my grandkids to the beach. So hanging in there just for this show. But today, on a more serious note, this is a much needed topic. And thank you very much, Radio Zindagi, Seba, Neeraj, and Ira, for giving us this platform to address this much needed topic. And the topic is the growing rape crisis in India. As we all know, the latest NCRB report reveals that a woman is raped every 15 minutes in India, while a dowry death occurs every hour. And experts have said that this deep-seated patriarchy has created a second-class status for women in India. And that's what the topic is today. I don't need to give you stats because I brought a group of expert panelists that are going to be doing that. So on that note, let me begin by introducing our wonderful team. I have with us a wonderful lady who's going to co-host the program with me. We start with Mitra Kaul. She's a political commentator. She's an author, contributor to Times of India, entrepreneur, Forbes, futurist. I mean, what can I say? The list is endless. She writes about politics, technology, business law, economy, and futurism. So welcome to being my partner in crime today, Mitra.
My pleasure, Renu, as always.
Thank you so much for that. And then moving on in alphabetical order today. So yes, I'm going to start with the gentlemen. They're fortunate today because of the alphabetical order. You get to be introduced first. I have with me Amitabh Mohan. He's the founder of HLS India. He's a celebrity psychologist, a life coach, practicing in India since 1992. He's worked extensively with victims of sexual abuse and rape, and he's helped over 3,000 people across the globe. So welcome, Amitabh. Welcome to the show.
Thank you so much, Renu.
Then we have with us Anna Vetticad. She's an award-winning journalist based in New Delhi in a 26-year career. And she definitely doesn't look like she's been around for 26 years. I think she's in high school. But 26 years career, she has worked across print, electronic, and digital media. She's the author of the book, The Adventures of an Intrepid, The Adventures, right?
Yes.
Is the book called The Adventures?
Critic.
Okay, yes. And she's a prominent voice on issues related to gender, culture, and the rights of marginalized in India. So welcome to the show, Anna.
Thank you for having me.
And excuse me if I made an error on your book. Then we have with us Dr. Rajat Mitra. He's a professor of clinical psychology who's worked with survivors of sexual assault for over 15 years. He's testified in numerous cases of violence against women and was awarded by the United Nations in 2011 for providing gender justice for women in the cases of heinous crimes. Welcome, Dr. Rajat.
Thank you.
Then we have with us Rajyasree Sen. She's an independent columnist who's written on the media, gender issues, politics, and pop culture for News Laundry, Mint, Economic Times, Indian Express, as well as the Wall Street Journal. Welcome to the show.
thank
Where
you.
is she? There you are, right there. I have to figure out as Zoom changes everybody around. Then we have with us Ms. Tanya Tikoo. She's a co-founder and editor-in-chief of the ObserveNow, India's first GK. What's GK? India's first GK.
General knowledge.
There you go.
General
Okay.
knowledge.
Yeah, okay. And citizen journalism app, which produces news stories in 120 words. Tanya has worked in brands like Times of India, which she's extensively covered, Crime Beat, and Business World. Welcome to the show, Tanya.
Hi. Thank you
And
for
I
having
think,
me.
last but not least, I have Swati Deshpande, who's actually on vacation. So we won't see her on video. We'll see her beautiful picture instead. But she's made the time to be on the show. She's a senior assistant editor at Times of India, Mumbai, where she's been covering courts for over a decade. She's passionate about law and work towards enlightening people about their legal and fundamental rights. She makes it her job to decipher for the public the truth, be it an intricate civil dispute or a gruesome criminal case. Welcome, Swati.
Thank you for having me, Renu.
Thank you so
20
much.
years.
Encourage all the listeners to definitely participate in this conversation. You can join our watch party on Facebook, and also you can listen to us, of course, on audio at 11:70 a.m. And on that note, I'm going to begin by turning this over to Mira. So Mira, maybe you can give us a little bit of background and some stats on why this topic is so important. I know you're very passionate about it. Why do you feel this topic was so important to address?
So number one, it's so important to address this topic because we get affected here in America as people of Indian origin, people with ethnicity and ties to our country. We do get affected by it. So it's not a topic that's only relevant to the subcontinent. It's very relevant for us, India, for us Indians here as well. Rape is a very common form of abuse that women in our communities here also face, along with domestic abuse. In America, of course, 27% rape cases are only reported. Some of them even are not adjudicated. 72% of people who commit rape in America are people known to victims. But in India, 90% of the crimes are perpetrated by people known very well to the victims. Having said that, we don't have the caste issue here like India does have that dynamic, but we have a color racism issue here as well. So there are a lot of parallels that we can draw between our situation here and the situation in India, but irrespective of where we are geographically, we are in a place where we need to talk about it. Not only do we need to talk about what's going on, we need to talk about the reasons behind it, because half the battle, I mean, rape and sending them to jail and the online interaction and the television channels screaming about this atrocity is one angle of it. What is causing it is the other angle. What is it about our society? Is patriarchy so deep-rooted that we can't, for over years, we haven't been able to work around it? Also, the psychology of the rapist is a very important aspect of it. And the law, what is making this worse? When people are going to jail, getting hanged for this crime, why are people going back and doing it over and over again? For goodness sake, 88 rapes a day is not a stat to be proud of. So let's talk more about it. I would want to start this entire discussion with Anna, asking Anna, because I know she's been very vocal about this issue. Anna, what is causing this?
First of all, Mira, I want to thank you for your opening remarks, because some of the coverage of rape and sexual violence in general in India that we've seen in the Western media has been a little more condescending than one would appreciate as a women's rights activist here in India. Because it's very important, it's very important that across the world as women, we offer each other solidarity, not competitiveness. Patriarchy is an issue worldwide. Sexual violence is an issue worldwide. Like you said, America has race, India has caste. Each one of us has our peculiarities and our unique characteristics. But at the end of the day, what unites everyone across the world is patriarchy. And in India, well, the reasons for sexual violence are manifold. I think that I think gender segregation in India is a huge problem. The fact that a large number of men, their interactions with women are restricted to their sisters, their mothers, and then a woman that they marry on the day that they marry her. I mean, as a result of which, a woman is this showpiece, this creature in a museum, and not someone you're interacting with on a daily basis. Obviously, this does not apply to all sections of society, but gender segregation is a huge problem in India. And the education system in India has not done something which activists have been talking about it for years, but we have to constantly talk about it because politicians just do not understand. The education system has to include gender sensitization, because men and women in classrooms have to be taught, students from kindergarten, the meaning of consent, that a woman has a right to say no, that when a woman is saying no, she is not playing games with you. So this lack of gender sensitization and gender segregation, combined with issues of caste and sectarian differences, all of this, it's a potent combination. And at the end of the day, in every country, when you have strife, who is the most vulnerable from every community? In India also, in every community, who's the most vulnerable? It's the women. When you want to punish someone from another community, what do you first do? You go and rape the women. So it's this potent combination, Mira, that's contributing to this disgracefully high rate of rapes in India.
So, from a psychological perspective, let me start with Dr. Amitabh Mohan. Is it a sexual script? I mean, is the behavior of men guided by the ground rules that, hey, when she says no, it really means yes?
See, when we are looking at the psyche behind it, there are so many factors. There cannot be a single factor that can be pointed out. But then one thing which is very important, which I strongly believe out of my experience primarily, is it is not about desire. It's about power. And you know, it is it is the manifestation of superiority and the position, whosoever the person who's indulging in that act of rape, and that is where the whole problem begins, and that's what is at the root of the whole problem. And when we attribute to various factors, we talk about male-female ratio in certain segment and certain area causing reason for increased rape and various other factors. But then it's not about that. It is about the psyche. It is about the maladaptation. It is about the psychopathology, which is leading to the problem. But then, if it is psychopathological, should we have a sympathy with the person who's indulging in that act? But then, if the behavior is more primitive and it is more animal instinct, which are more dominant, animals need to be put in the cage, not left alone outside. So that's where what you said, Mira, earlier, that the psychological aspect and the legal aspect is very, very important. And there's another factor in my understanding that, people commit rape because they are, because they can. That's something which is very important to be understood. People are indulging in rape because they can, because, the act is done, but then the legal mechanism is so slow, and it takes so much of a time that it is never acting as a deterrent for people who are getting that thought. And that's why they're indulging in it because they can. And of course, when it comes to the psyche of the person, which I'm sure we'll come to that in due course of time, but I personally feel it does have a psychological manifestation. It is about the power positioning. It is not about the desire, because if it is only about desire, there are so many sources, and there are available. One of the oldest profession in the world is available there to fulfill your primitive desires and your sexual instincts. But then it's not just about desire. It's about that power position and having that sense of superiority. And that's where I said people indulge in committing this heinous crime because they can.
So that's
we have a question. Sorry, we have a question here from one of the audience members. And I'll pose this question to Dr. Rajat. The question is, does the panel feel that there is any credence to the thought that this plague upon India is due to, in part, of the disgusting practices of abortions carried out of the past decades on female fetuses, causing now an imbalance in the male-female ratio? Dr. Rajat, could I put that question in for you?
I think as a causative factor, no, because I don't think that there is any single causative factor for sexual assault. And I prefer using the word sexual assault rather than rape, because I think it's, people have campaigned for it. And it can be any assault which is sexual in nature that is as heinous, and rape is a more older term. So I would prefer to use that. The ratio of male to female has been often talked about as a reason, but there does not exist any empirical evidence to show that this is a causative factor for sexual assault. To this day, we don't have anything like that. And we need to know that there are different reasons for sexual assault. I mean, for example, say if a Dalit woman is going through the village, and the village passes through where both Thakurs live on either side, she is vulnerable, right? If, for example, a city girl goes through a place where there is no light, then she is vulnerable. So there are different reasons for why sexual assaults take place, and we can probably answer that at another question. But this is definitely not the causative factor now.
So it is the right time for me to pivot to Swati. From a Dr. Amitabh Mohan said that it is the legal system that causes the delay, which lets people think that they can probably get away with it. Is getting away with it such a big issue? But why is the legal system so slow, Swati?
Why is it so slow? Well, in India, as perhaps everyone's aware, there's just like apart from the fact that you have millions of people, you have millions of cases that are pending, literally. In the system, it's clogged with, backlogs, as we call it. And the criminal system depends on a trial to take place. You can't have a judgment being given without a real trial. And what's a trial? That, the accused is put on trial, which means that evidence has to be led in court. And evidence can only be evidence which is provided by testimony or otherwise, forensic evidence, medical evidence, but that all becomes evidence when it's tested in court and it's put to something called cross-examination. This is world over, innocent until proven guilty. I'm not for a moment defending anybody, but that's the law. That's the standard principle in law. For that to take place, in fact, there are some fast-track courts which we have in India, but the sheer number of cases, has put this whole pressure, and I think it's quite impossible, if you ask me, right now, for this kind of backlog to become shorter or shrunk. But that alone cannot be the reason why people think that they can get away with, although it's often said that, oh, they think the law is never going to catch me. I'm never going to get, convicted. I'm maybe at best get arrested, but, I'll be out on bail soon. And so it's all hunky-dory. I'll go there and do what I want. But I don't think that's entirely the only contributing factor. Like I think Doctor said, it's a combination of factor. It's also, to my mind, just to add quickly, apart from the fact that it's power play, because power play can only come from one segment of these kind of perpetrators, but it won't come from perpetrators who are, let's say, people who are already, beaten and, in a sense, downtrodden. You don't always have a rapist who's coming from a family that has everything sorted for him, right? There was a case in Bombay, very quickly, there was a case in Bombay where I believe in 2012, a photojournalist and well, we don't name in India the victims or the survivors, as we call them, were raped on one evening while she was on a walk, and ultimately it's led to conviction. 4 people have been given death sentence even. The reason why I'm saying this is that the accused or now the convicts, as we call them, were people who you would normally not even give a second look at. When I'm saying that, I don't mean it in any derisive way, but these are people who hadn't got a chance at life, if I may say that. So these are not people who are doing a power play. It has happened, and it could have happened for very many reasons that people take to crime, rape being one of them. If that sort of satisfies.
So
what
you believe the factors could be objectification or social sexuality, where it's like the physical gratification.
Objectification is, of course, a factor, but not always, is what I'm trying to say.
Objectification is something that I want to definitely speak to Anna about, but before that, I want to ask Rajyasree. Rajyasree, there is a combination of factors around this. There is the political will factor. There is the fact that social sexuality is a big deal because people feel that the gratification that they will get with not aligning with one person, but having a having a great degree of sexual partners, a huge choice of sexual partners, and they don't really care whether the sexual partners want them or not. But the alternative to vanilla sex, That's another. I believe almost 18% of people who rape come from that point of view. Then, of course, objectification is a big thing, but biological essentialism. I'm a man, I need it. I've got hormones, and women don't, kind of stuff. But that is one part of it. The other part of it is the politics of it all. Rajyasree, would you like to comment about that?
Yeah, so one point I first wanted to make about something which Swati said, that, these are people, a lot of the people who are perpetrators of these crimes, which are just plain rapists, let's call them what they are people from a very repressed strata of society. So it's not a power play, but that is actually where the power play comes in, because the only place where they feel they are being able to exert their power is over a woman, purely because finally they are, at the end of the day, male physiology is such that men are stronger than women physically. That is the only way in which they can exert power and suddenly be in a position where they are the ones dominating. So especially when you come from a repressed background, you sometimes feel that this is the only way that you can exert yourself. That is one thing. The second that I wanted to say is that I do feel, we've spoken about the many reasons that there are. The IPC, we have an Indian Penal Code which dates back to the Victorian era. It's patriarchy through and through. In the most upper class families, educated families, you see this as well. Most of us are shocked when we see the kind of patriarchy you see in educated families, but that is something which is part and parcel of India, most Asian, the subcontinent, I feel. But there's also the thing that many people believe that they are truly above the law, because most of our political leaders have a large number of criminal cases against them, and they are sitting in parliament as lawmakers. So as a common man, so if we just want statistic, 46% of members of parliament have criminal records. 29% of Lok Sabha MPs have very serious criminal charges against them. Now, as a common man, when I look at this, that the lawmaker is the person who has a criminal charge against him, why would I think that me committing a crime will lead to me having a worse life? I will think that, but everyone seems to be doing it, and they are above the law. And on the matter of the backlog of cases, which was mentioned, I have to say the Kailash Satyarthi Children's Foundation did a study on the number of child sex abuse cases that are pending. And they have said that it would take 2 decades to clear the cases that are pending till the end of 2016. So forget about the last 4 years. And, it's just, I think that it's not just in India, but mainly in India, since we are talking, there's a commodification of women and children, where we are viewed as property of the family or property. It's like livestock. So it doesn't matter. You don't have a right to say, at the end of the day, when you think that marital rape is not considered illegal in India, our law doesn't recognize any woman above the age of 15 who's your wife. You are not forcing her to have sex. So you immediately see how it is viewed, right? So it's a combination of very regressive laws. IPC, our Indian Penal Code, we have laws which are not implemented. Many rapists are police officers. So in the case that had happened, it was the Katwa case, that horrible abduction of the 8-year-old girl. You had at least 3 police officers are the ones who've been convicted, and those are the people who got convicted. There were supposedly a larger number of perpetrators. So it's so riddled into our psyche, and even in the most rapes happen by people who are known to the survivor. So that just shows, and it happens in families. It happens in families which are upper class, educated families, and no one talks about it because there's such a stigma against rape. So that is the other thing, where that, the person I'm going to rape or attack is not going to talk about it because she's going to be stigmatized by society. That also spurs you on. We are honestly living in a version of Lord of the Flies, without the literature and interesting characters, where there's no morality, there are no rules, it's like anything goes. And the people,
Rajyasree, this is a perfect
investigate
time
learn.
for me. I'm going to come back to you about the casteism aspect of it, and I'm going to talk to
Yeah.
Swati about that too. But before I do that, I just want to pivot to Anna and ask her, Anna, as people of Indian origin, even in the United States, we're not a big community. We're only 4 to 5 odd million people, but we're deeply connected to our country of origin through even second generation Indian kids who have never even been to India. But we're deeply connected through Bollywood culture. It's either cricket or Bollywood, and Bollywood more than cricket. How does Bollywood really impact the way we look at society, and objectification, especially the sexual script, the hostility in sexism, the entire concept of ownership of women, not only Bollywood, but even if you the fact that Star Plus had to go back and revive a show with a Rasoda theme in it. How do they find buyers for this kind of content even now?
Mira, before I answer that question, I want to address a couple of the points that have been raised already. I think one of the panelists said that the skewed sex ratio in India is not the cause of rapes. I think to look at it that way is slightly simplistic. You see, the skewed sex ratio in India is a result of female infanticide and female feticide. Female feticide, as in the sex-selective abortions of female fetuses, is happening because people don't want daughters. And why do they not want daughters? Because women are not valued in society. And it is that same attitude that reflects in men who think that it is acceptable to be violent with women simply to assert themselves. And another point that was raised, I think someone said that it's not power play because there may be poor men who are raping rich women, uneducated men raping educated women. But you see, that is where the power play is. This doesn't mean that only dominant castes rape. The point is, this is power play within patriarchy, where a man is saying, I can assert myself and do this to you. This is my punishment to you. In fact, since you're talking about Bollywood, Bollywood is in fact not India's only film industry. There are multiple Indian film industries, and there is this case going on right now in Mollywood. That's our nickname for the Malayalam film industry, where the allegation after police investigations was that a prominent female actor was abducted and raped in a moving car in 2017. She filed a police complaint, and guess what the investigations revealed? That the prime conspirator behind that rape was a major male superstar of the same film industry who allegedly got her raped because he wanted to take revenge on her, because he felt that she was friends with his wife and had told his wife that he was having an affair with someone. This is pure and simple. What is it? This is a rich man, a prominent woman, and he's taking revenge on her, and he's using, so rape is a weapon. Now, why are Indian film industries producing films that objectify women, devalue women, and commodify women? Because Indian film industries don't exist in isolation. They exist within this patriarchal setup, and they emerge from this society that sees women as commodities. And most of our film industries, I mean, there's a lot that's wonderful and beautiful that's happening in Indian film industries, but most of our film industries are male dominated. The money is in the hands of men. Most of the producers are men. And therefore the prevalent social attitudes are getting reflected in these films. Since you referred specifically to Bollywood, let me give you an example. There is a film called Holiday. A soldier is never off duty. Holiday, starring Akshay Kumar, in which there is this song in which he's courting Sonakshi Sinha, and throughout the song, he stalks her. He sees her at one point on a sports field, grabs her and forcibly kisses her. And within seconds, after the song, they show that he's in love with her. And this is a woman who was not interested in him. She'd got a marriage proposal from his family and she had rejected him. What is the film saying? It's making a point that when a woman says no, she means maybe. And when she says maybe, she means yes. And it doesn't matter whether she's saying yes or no or maybe, because it's the man's decision. He likes her, therefore he has a right to do what he wants with her. But as you asked about Bollywood, Indian film industries in general, the Indian entertainment sector in general is merely a reflection of Indian society. They do not exist in a vacuum.
Thank you for that. Really quickly, I just want to remind everyone who's tuned in and we're streaming live on Facebook. You're watching Voices being brought to you by Radio Zindagi. And today's show is a very important topic about the increased rape crisis in India. And we have an amazing panelist with us today. And I'm going to go back to Mira again, because I think, Tanya, you want to continue on with where Anna has left off in terms of the same topic, right?
Right. So Anna spoke about objectification as a factor and how that relates back to the society. But we have Tanya Tikoo here, who actually has been on the receiving end of that same objectification as a urban working Indian woman. Let's talk more about what your experience has been, Tanya.
First of all, I hope I'm clear and my voice is not echoing or anything. So I don't really see what you mean when you say that I've been on the receiving end, because I think there is no such particular incident that I would like to talk about. But fortunately or unfortunately, all the women, not only in India, I think everywhere in every corner of the world have been on the receiving end of this horrific male gaze that we keep talking about all the time. Even if somebody hasn't spoken to me with disrespect, but even if I'm just wearing shorts and walking on the streets and I get that unexpected, uncomfortable look from men, I think that's enough to make me or any other woman my age, younger, elder, to feel uncomfortable. I think that's the first thing that I'd like to say. And I'm very happy to hear the thoughts of all the panelists here as well. And I think I agree with most of them. Anna ma'am, I think one thing very interesting that you said, and I want to little build on that before I move on. You spoke about gender sensitization in schools. I think that's very, very important. And I think one aspect that should be added to that should be sex education. And it has to be done at the age of 10 to 12. And every child should have access to it. And even if right now we don't have center or state government policies for that, parents should take charge. Because it's not happening, so you've got to make it happen. You've got to make it happen for your kids, at least. That's the best you can do. So parents have to take charge and educate their children as much as possible. Having said that, I think I'm really not going to go deep into why we're doing this, because everybody has said a lot, and there are people from the psychology industry as well here who, shared perspectives. So I think what I'm going to say is how I see the world and how I think we can make this change. It's very important to understand that when you read about and when you hear about rape, it's very, very important to understand as a community, we have to separate caste, religion, and state politics from that. The most annoying and the most horrific and the most sad thing about the Hathras rape case in India was the way mainstream Indian and international media reported it. And I'm saying this in quotes. The first line of every story that I read was the 19-year-old Dalit victim. Now, I think there are women on the panel, there are men on the panel. I don't think if I belong to a certain caste or you belong to a certain caste, this horrific incident of brutality that happens would hurt you less and more. It's just that this just takes away from the root cause of the problem and creates an entire issue around politicizing the whole thing. And we just as a community stray away from the problem. And that's why we continuously have these discussions and hardly anything comes out of it. Having said that, I think the way I see the way forward, that I see what I feel that women who are listening to me and maybe agree or disagree with me in whatever ways, I think the best thing we should do is, since nobody is helping us to come out of this situation, I think we have to take the onus on ourselves. We have to be our own guard and we have to look out for ourselves. The first thing that I think every woman should do, I think it's very, very, very important for you to be independent. Get a job. No matter how rich your husband is, no matter how rich your father is, you have to be independent of every male member of your family. If you have access to quality education, do not waste it. And I think this kind of brutality only happens because there is a certain section of humans who feel that women are inferior to men. So I think the only way to change this And the easier way to change this actually might not be the only way, but the easier way to change this whole situation is if we work down from top to bottom. And I think this is where the change will happen. This is where the people are easier to educate. And this is where the change is going to be more aspirational for the new upcoming Gen Z that we're looking at, who might be the change makers that we're looking at. So
Thanks
just
so
take
much,
charge.
Tanya. Thank you so much for that. That's really, really valuable. This is the right pivot for me to actually ask Rajyasree. Rajyasree, we were just a few days ago, Mahendra Singh Dhoni lost a cricket match. And as soon as that happened, immediately his 6-year-old daughter started receiving rape threats. How degenerate are we as a society? Why would we do that? What kind of power play is it practiced here? Is it the only weapon that we have against somebody who doesn't come up to our expectations?
So I remember I was discussing that with you, that it is the worst, according to, which is what I'm saying, that this is the worst way to attack a family's honor, is the way it's looked at because of patriarchy. That what you do, you rape the woman in the family. And I just want to point out something which was said just before this, that it's not about caste, that it was carrying on being said that Dalit woman, but this case which happened where this girl has now died, it was totally to do with caste because these were Thakur men. It is a village where the Thakur have domination over there. Even for when you're applying for the NREGA, they had applied for this. There was this whole discourse about why were so many calls made from the girl's family to the Thakur family. It's because the Thakurs even decide who gets on the list to get on those NREGA jobs. You are not allowed to step into the Thakur's fields. You are not allowed to drink water from the tube well. The best way of dominating a Dalit person or someone who is untouchable, especially if the person is a woman, is by sexually assaulting them. It is simply terrible that this is the state we are in, that there's untouchability today in today's India. And this is despite us having an Untouchability Offences Act, which is clearly not implemented, which is the other problem in India. It's the Untouchability Offences Act of 1955, which in all these years has not been implemented clearly, because every day when you open the newspaper, you read that a Dalit man has been bludgeoned to death because he went and took water, drank water from the same tube well. It is horrific to see. Now, keeping that aside,
I just want because you've brought up a really important legal question. I wanted Swati to weigh upon it, and then I'm going to come back to you in the next round. Talk more about this. Swati.
Yes.
So this entire
I'll make a quick disclaimer first. I'm not going to comment on any case that is pending investigation, which includes Hathras. Two, because we can't really comment and say with any, as is being said here, about who's done what and with any kind of conviction. The matter is an investigation, whether we like it or not. That's the state it is at, and I'm going to accept it for this discussion. Any other question? Quickly on the power play point that, that was perhaps reacted to when I said that. What you're forgetting, let me quickly tell you what rape is and how it's defined in Indian law, if I can get into that very quickly. I think the world over, that's a definition, that if it's against your will and consent, then it's rape. And so that, I believe, is why the phrase, it's a whole power play, perhaps comes in, not necessarily, because you think that, okay, that's the only way men can show their power over a woman who's otherwise helpless and has to give in. There have been very many cases, and why I'm saying this is there have been a rise in cases where the women file cases of rape on the grounds that the man has breached his promise to marry me, and he's taken that consent from me on this false promise of marriage, and therefore I consented. You get what I'm saying? The consent is so important. Otherwise, it's mutual consent and there's no rape. So when there's no consent and there's an act of this physical abuse, sexual assault, use of force, and therefore, and only then it becomes rape. Sorry, you were asking me something on another law that is existing in India and which is not implemented. Is that what you're asking me?
Yeah, sure. We're talking about the casteism and how that is still not eradicated. That's what Rajyasree was.
Yeah. The untouchability offenses.
That's a different topic altogether. We're talking about how rape occurs. It is occurring, unfortunately, and people from particular castes are also being victims of it. I think Rajyasree is the best person to answer that.
Move over to some questions coming in now from our audience. So my next question, I think it was Rajyasree that brought up the politicians, but I'll pose this question to Dr. Amitabh. A question from one of our listeners on Facebook is, how are politicians allowed in office despite criminal records? So if you could give your input on that, I'm curious to know that too. Mind you, who are we to speak in this country right now with who we have as our leader? I'm not even going to start on that topic. I promised everyone.
Renu, sorry, may I quickly butt in? Just to tell you what the law is, under the Representation of People's Act, a person can, stand for election, cannot stand for election unless he's convicted. So if I am an accused, and as an accused, I'm innocent until proven guilty, I can stand for elections, and that's how many do. Now, that's the law. And it doesn't say even that if you're charge sheeted, that you cannot, because your trial is still pending. So you can, you just have to disclose this fact. That's the state of affairs. And well, then this whole delay may perhaps kick in, that why are these cases pending for so long?
Okay.
Now you know why they're pending for so long.
Basically innocent until proven guilty, right?
Renu, to add to what Swati said, that's a legal perspective to it. And I would, this is a question that has been in all our minds, not only in the context of rape, but in various contexts. And I would say, हर फूल कब गुलाब होंगे ऐसे भी चंद सवाल होंगे लेकिन क्या हर सवाल के जवाब होंगे. There will always be few questions which will remain unanswered, and this is one of those questions. But however, to add a perspective to what you said just now, I would like to add in this political context something that has been paining me lately all the more. I think women is not raped once, is raped multiple times. First physically, and then several times in courts, emotionally and mentally. When somebody sensationalizes an act of rape, an incident, an accident, for a political benefit, for a political mileage, I think that is when the woman has been raped once again. When a media channel, forgive me for saying that, is sensationalizing an act of rape for increasing TRP, there is so many multiple times the woman has been raped, and so many existing laws have been flouted there. When we talk about POXCO, Prevention of Sexual Offense Against Children, when we talk about Prevention of Sexual Offense Against Women Act, when we talk about these acts provide very, very specifically about the privacy. Where is that clause when it is being politicized and sensationalized? Where is that clause when media is acting so irresponsible? And I'm not against media reporting. I'm definitely sensationalizing it is a point of concern.
Mira, could I come in, please?
The media is only highlighting the offense.
It's a way it is presented.
Anna, why don't you comment, and right after that, Rajyasree, maybe you finish what you had to start, and then I want to move on to Dr. Mitra and Tanya.
Okay, first of all, Dr. Amitabh, I'm a media person myself, but I do not disagree with you at all. You are absolutely right. The Indian media has been disgraceful and increasingly disgraceful with the television media explosion. We have gone downhill. And the fact that people cover a rape sometimes like using illustrations and the kind of patriarchal, misogynistic comments that are made by our television anchors, I completely agree with you, Dr. Amitabh, and I don't think that as media persons we should be defensive about that. If we are constantly criticizing other people, we should be willing to be critiqued. The reason why I requested to come speak up right now is I realized that there's caste denialism happening on this discussion. To say that it is wrong to emphasize the caste of the victim in the Hathras case is to suggest that caste does not play a role in patriarchy. Caste is an instrument of patriarchy, and we have repeatedly seen for decades, and why decades? For centuries, men of upper castes have used rape as a weapon to further subjugate people of the lower castes, the Dalit community, and as a weapon to insult the women, to degrade the men, to claim that, this word honor is used to suggest that a family's or community's honor resides in a woman's hymen. And to say that caste does not play a role either in Hathras or in other cases is to deny a reality. And it's not just Hathras. In the there are many cases, but I'm going to cite one from the 1990s because there was this woman, a lower caste woman in a Rajasthan village who was working against child marriage. She was working with the government. And as an act of revenge, punishment, according to the media reports, she was raped by upper caste men. And you know what? One of the statements made by a lower court that acquitted those men was that in India, upper caste men do not even touch lower caste people. Therefore, how can it possibly be that these upper caste men raped her? And then also there was an uncle and a nephew who were among the rapists. So the judge said, how can it be that an uncle and a nephew in a conservative society like India would jointly rape a woman? Back in, this is possibly before I was born, the Mathura rape case, which is one of the most famous rape cases and it was a very important landmark moment in the women's rights movement in India. Again, there were policemen who raped this minor Dalit woman, and then they claimed that since she had been sexually active, it's not possible that they had raped her and that she had in fact had consensual sex. Please let us not deny that dominant communities use rape and sexual violence as a weapon against communities that are marginalized. And right now, just as I think that there is sexual violence that is taking place as a backlash against feminism and against women's rights movements worldwide, I think we are seeing very clearly sexual violence taking place against Dalit women in India as a backlash against the rise of very prominent Dalit voices who have been protesting against caste and have got platforms to protest against caste. And this sexual violence is a resistance and a revenge against Dalit voices that are speaking up against caste.
I know, Dr. Mohan, you want to add to what Anna said, but before I do that, I want to let Rajyasree finish what she's been trying to finish for some time, and then I'll move to you before I move to Dr. Mitra. Rajyasree.
No, I just wanted to say that this whole discourse that we are saying, that how could someone say something, which it is a wonder that the 16-year-old boy, it has turned out, said this, an educated boy who goes to school from a middle-class home, made a threat against Mahinder Singh Dhoni's, and he wasn't the only one, other people also did it, but he is the one the investigation has found, Mahinder Singh Dhoni's 6-year-old child. And to think that to punish the father for losing a cricket match who must sexually abuse his child shows it is sociopathic behavior to me. It is as simple as that. I just want to say that this kind of discourse is taking place also because our very own politicians indulge in it. In West Bengal, where I come from, there was in 2012, there was a very heinous gang rape which had happened on Park Street. And the female chief minister, Mamta Banerjee, had said it was a fabrication. Her MP, Kakuli Ghosh Dostitar, said that it was said that the woman must have been a prostitute and must have had a misunderstanding with her clients, thereby also implying that if you are a sex worker, you can be sexually abused. That's like part and parcel, like occupational hazard. Abhijit Mukherjee, Pranab Mukherjee, the president's son, had said when the protests were happening about the Delhi gang rape that no action was being taken. He said that these dented and painted women are protesting. These pretty ladies are out there during the Unnao and Katwa rapes that happened. Again, accusations were made about, it's insinuations about women. It's that women are commodities. They are sexual objects at the end of the day. That's all. And we have no say in what we should be fine with and not fine with. And this is, I do feel our lawmakers are such suspect people that when you as a common man sees that, but the MP said it himself and he said it in parliament, so why can't I say it on social media? And social media has unleashed people who should not be speaking, have suddenly found an avenue to speak anonymously and say anything and everything. Anna will know this because we are part of the media. I used to write for First Post. I used to be their pop culture columnist, and I remember I wrote an article on Narendra Modi, and the comments were just about raping me and saying, we know where you are and we can find you. And that is the thing. There's no verbal argument. The argument is that we will punish you through sexual violence because that is the only, it's like dealing with savages.
So I know Anna's been through it. I've been
Yeah.
kind of seen Anna go through it through years, and this is
Yeah.
crazy. But before I go to Dr. Mohan, Rajyasree, I want to pick Dr. Rajat Mitra's mind about this. I've worked with Dr. Mitra before, and we interviewed a sexual harasser at that point in time to get into the psyche. Why? Because remember, rape is the outcome of a certain condition that these people are undergoing. What is it? And we actually sat and interviewed and rolled on tape a sexual harasser just to get into the psyche. Dr. Mitra, what is wrong with these people psychologically?
If you ask me what's wrong with them psychologically, there is something wrong, but we may not say that it is psychological because sometimes these men, psychologically, they can score perfectly all right on tests. So any test you give, they will come out excellently, and we have done that, right? So there are a couple of things about sexual assaulters that we need to know. One is that it's multifactorial. It is not due to a single factor, and different factors combined together, which is environmental, biological, to produce a certain predisposition. And what I said earlier about not being causative, I also said that it is contributory. There is a difference between the two. It is not that when I say it's not causative, it doesn't mean that anything, that I'm letting it go. One of the things about sexual assaulters is that many of them say that, or they understand this is the only way to feel high inside the brain. When they sexually assault a woman, they feel high inside and they don't know, or they don't believe that they can get that sense of high in any other way, right? I can share with you, I have worked with a few thousand sexual assaulters, testified in a few hundred cases. One of the things that comes across by and large with these people is that for them, a relationship is too complex. Like the group that I used to hold in Tihar jail, we had a project running for almost 5 years. The talk, sometimes, these were young people around 18 to 21 who had been in jail for sexual assault, sometimes multiple. And it was the DG who had started a reformation program. I don't know how far reformation you can do, with such people, but anyway, we started it. And one of the things that came across is that, sir, what fun do you get out of establishing a relationship with a woman? these people only know mentally that, to have a woman means to go ahead, have a physical act with her, force yourself down. And somewhere they feel forcing down is also something which would be enjoyable for the woman. This is the way their mindset operates. Like pedophiles, for example, typically talk about the child enjoying sex. I mean, there are groups which have, for example, their motto as sex before 8 or it is too late. That is the kind of a world we live in. And I have dealt with a member of such a group. Yeah, I mean, your parents are denying you sex, right? Your parents are telling you not to go for sex, right? So I'll tell you. So they would seduce, they would talk to the child like that, get the child over. I mean, this is a very complex and murky world in which these people believe that the only way to, for example, have, you can enjoy sex is by either forcing yourself or going ahead with that and not establishing through the normal pathway. Like one of them asked me that, sir, are you married? I said, yes, I am. And sometimes you have to give personal examples. So they said, sir, you quoted your wife. I said, yes, we are both psychologists. We quoted each other. And I could see, that did not understand this concept that, there is a sensitivity, emotion, delicacy in the sexual act, which contributes to actually being physically intimate at a later stage. For them, it's a one-stop process, which actually they are going for. And this is true with sexual assaulters across different cultures across the world. So there is a biological factor too, apart from social factors that contribute and lead them to that, right? So it is biopsychosocial, which combines to give them a certain mindset. Now, of course, you have exceptions to that, but exceptions should not be seen as a rule. We had a case in which a couple of students who passed from a very reputed college in Delhi, the last day they got high on alcohol and they ended up in the street with the brothel, GB Road, and one of them was a regular visitor, and they were told that the person that you are looking for is busy or not there, something like that. They came back again asking for her. She was not there. And then the person said, Sab, bacha chalega kya? Because everyone is busy. And they agreed, right? I mean, these are college students. They were arrested and then they were, taken for that, right? But this case cannot be seen as a mainstream case. There are exceptions to that. We need to see overall the macro picture, the micro picture. If, for example, if tomorrow there is war, like in Sri Lanka where I worked, there were thousands of sexual assaults committed. Almost 30,000 is the number. And the Sri Lankan human rights groups that I work with, we worked with hundreds and thousands of women, literally, who were survivors of sexual assault. We did not know what to do. So the context, the cultural period that we go through, different social factors that come in, all combined with a certain biological predisposition within the person to, kind of lead to that. And still, that is not the total complete answer. So that is something I would like to share as to what goes wrong.
I'm listening to all of you, and as an educator, who deals with very, very young children, I'm just appalled. But I have noticed one thing, even growing up over here, in the last 30 years, and especially now with social media, we brought up a point, one of the panelists brought up a point about how people take to social media, that even now with this recent blow up on this actor who committed suicide, I don't want to turn our show to that. But when I got trolled on a comment that I made on the show, I had calls for 4 hours at night, and all they could say was, we're going to come to rape you and your daughters. And this was in this country. We're not talking back in India. So it's just really sad. Yeah. So I'm going to, Tanya, I have a question for you, because you brought up the dress sense, and you brought up how, women, we're the ones that always have to think about how we're going to dress when we go out. Men can walk with shirtless and they have no problems. Mm-hmm. I know my parents at my school have this question, that if you had a daughter, I don't know if you do, but if you had a daughter, we're listening to this whole conversation about rape. How are we meant to raise our daughters? I mean, we teach them about being resilient and about being strong, but really is there a way that we're going to educate our men in our society? And we're talking about especially the South Asian community, being a South Asian radio station. How are we meant to raise our children?
I think a very important point you raised here, and I'm going to quote a direct quote from Ms. Menka Gandhi, who I recently interviewed, and I think that this is straight from her. And I think one of the most important, profound things she said to me was that the biggest problem in our society is that women don't support other women. They bring other women down. So when you talk about dressing, when you talk about policing, I think that begins very early on for girls, right when they're in school, and not even high school or middle school, when you're like in class 3, class 4, class 5. So I remember I went to one of the best schools in the country, and it was a defense school. But I remember, and I heard this from a lot of people as well. I don't know how many of you faced that, but I think this was a very common phenomenon in India, that we were not allowed to wear kajal. We were not allowed to put any nail paint. Of course, there's a lot of things that comes with the discipline and stuff like that. But there were some really annoying rules where we were, because our uniform was a skirt, so we were forced to wear bloomers under it. And teachers would actually check if you're wearing bloomers by touching us inappropriately, I would say so. That kind of social policing happened, and there were no rules for boys. If your hair was out of the way, you would be punished, but a boy could literally do anything. Same thing happened when we grew up and went to colleges. Girls' hostel timings were 7:38. Boys' hostel, no timing. So what are you essentially trying to teach us from a very young age? I have to be resilient. I have to be careful. I have to do my own policing apart from the social policing that I deal with any which ways. And then boys have no rule whatsoever. So once again, I think I'm going to say the same thing. The onus lies again on women. I don't have any children, and I'm not married yet. But yes, if I ever do have kids, I think the two things that I'm going to teach them is that my girl and my boy will have gender neutral roles in the family. That's the first. I'm going to teach my daughter to be smart in the sense to assess the situation, like I was talking about before. So if I have to go down to my local grocery store, my mother wouldn't say anything about what I'm wearing, or anybody in the family wouldn't say anything. But it's me who checks down, is my cleavage showing, or is my short too short? Why do I have to do that? My brother wouldn't do that. He would just walk away scratching his head or scratching any part of his body and doing whatever he wants. So I think that's the kind of parity that has to be brought in. The daughter has to be smart in terms of assessing where she's going, what she's doing, and who are the people around her. And most importantly, I think the onus lies on women in terms of raising the right kind of children, the right kind of boys. I think boys have to be taught from a very young age that you have to respect women, you have to share responsibilities, you have to share roles, and that's the only way to deal with the situation, I think.
Thank you for that. So that leads me to my next question to Amitabh. We're talking about how to raise daughters, but what about men? How are we going to educate our men?
Thank you so much, Renu, for this question, because, I would like to add a few perspectives, which may sound slightly radical. I don't disagree when Anna says that it has been used as a tool or instrument in the communal context. But at the same time, I would like people to understand that when we talk about rape, it is not a gender fact. There is a rape against, a lot of male adolescents. Dr. Mitra talked about pedophiles and other cases. So, of course, because there's been a certain sociological evolutionary context where the gender advantage and disadvantages have been there, and that is where probably the crime against women has been more talked about and has been more in the numbers as well. And in our Indian social context also, crime against men is less reported. And here I would like to bring one more perspective in context here, that when we get the survivors, the rape survivors, and they are going through that emotional distress and gone through that accident, some of the factors which are very important for us to hear and get a perspective, that is, number one, that who is the offender? There are so many types. I would talk about two in particular. One, stranger. Other, known. Someone in acquaintance, someone in family, someone in relation. Now, these are the two broad categories of offenders we have. And in the second kind of offender, that is the acquaintance and the known factor, which is a fairly dominant number. And also, if we go by the statistics, there was some study done in India about in the year 2016 or so, which says that almost 70% cases, 72% cases are unreported. In 2018, another study, which is there reported in Wikipedia, quoted as well, that almost about 52% cases in India are unreported. There's been one study by UN which says across the globe, it's only 10% cases which are reported. And, cases not being reported is also leading to the increase in the crime rate, crime against women. When we talk about rape against women, I'm specifying the gender here, rape against women is the fourth largest crime against women in India. Now, and still it goes unreported. 50% cases are unreported if we look into the current context. Now, the problem is when the person comes, I would, I would not cite even as an example any new cases, because that also identification can lead to trauma for people. But then something which I would comment about 12, 15 years back, there was this young, beautiful girl, and she has gone through this sad experience. And it was a gang rape, 4 people, and the case is from Delhi. And, I would not go into the details of the case, but then what I would like to mention here, some of the problem which precede, after the act that happened, when this girl went home, she informed mom, her mother, and mother said, shh, stay quiet. Don't let your dad know. You know your dad's anger. Now, between mother and the survivor, the case has been hushed up. That is a big challenge. Worse than the act is what precedes after that, because that causes a bigger challenge, that causes a bigger trauma for the person.
So Dr. Mohan, victim blaming is a very big part of this entire process, and it also makes the rapists bolder because, hey, if it's not reported, they're safe. If they're able to place it on, oh, this girl has had sex before,
Right.
she's unmarried and she's had sex before, that's fine. Oh, she wears these clothes. Oh, and she drinks. Oh my God, what a catastrophe. So we can just keep victim blaming till kingdom come. But my question to Swati is, where is the system, Swati, the legal system that should be making it possible for these women to come and at least complain? Or even in the Hathras case, the cops buried the case instead of taking it seriously and investigating. They destroyed the case. So why is this system not working for women? Why is the legal apparatus in India not working for women?
Okay, quickly again, on the Hathras, there's a petition, the multiple petitions in the Supreme Court pending an order on what's to be done, etc., etc. I'm not getting into that for the moment. Quickly, yes, oftentimes women, including now that there's a rise in the number of POXO cases, children under 18 who are being sexually assaulted, and the numbers rising, like I said again. Though we have by law a requirement that these cases ought to be handled by a woman judge, it has to be in camera, which means that nobody else is allowed. In fact, some judges in practice do not even allow the defendant lawyer's male junior, sometimes in Bombay at least, would allow a female junior. So the idea is to make it as safe as possible. It doesn't happen because oftentimes the defendant, the lawyer for the defense counsel, as you call it, and this is where I think doctor said that women are raped not just once but multiple times. This is also one of the examples, is that you put these kind of questions to the girl, to a young child, even a woman, if it's a major, you want to embarrass them, you want to harass them, you keep asking these questions over and over again, literally, putting them to tears. So what I'm trying to say is, yes, all this does happen, but that's part of the trial. Do lawyers have to have more sensitivity in approaching this? Yes. Does the law provide for that? Well, yes and no. Under the POCSO Act, there are certain guidelines laid out on what has to be done. A lot of it is not getting followed. For instance, the victim, the girl, child, her parents, etc., ought to be told about every process, every proceedings, every step that happens when the accused files for bail, anticipatory bail, etc. It doesn't happen yet, and these are supposedly the safeguards, which a lot of lawyers also don't know. There's a petition right now, and as I speak, in the High Court to ask for a parity to allow the victim or the girl or the survivor, rape survivor, well, it's a child in this case, to have a lawyer to sort of argue against a bail proceeding which may have been filed. Anyway, coming back to, yes, it's not a very conducive atmosphere for a woman facing being on the witness stand. I mean, to testify against an accused in her own rape case. It's not. Perhaps I think maybe these kind of discussions, maybe more. There has to be some more amendments to the law to ensure that lawyers also tackle this with sensitivity and yes, sensitivity more so, and some respect to be shown, and not make a entire sort of scene out of it as it happens in court. Though it's kept away from the media. The media can't be there. It's away from the media gaze, so to say. Yep.
Thanks, Swati.
Yeah.
Renu.
We have a few more minutes before we wrap up because a lot of people are sitting in midnight zone time as us in America time for lunch. But anyway, I'm going to start with our closing statements, and if I'm going to go around the room, and if everybody can give a couple of minutes and just their thoughts on this topic that we have today. I know we can do multiple shows on this. We haven't even touched the surface yet. And in my opinion, I think rape is the only crime where the victim actually becomes the accused. And on that note, I'd like to actually begin with Anna on your closing statement, and we'll go around the room. And then, of course, Mira, I'd love you to close the show. So Anna, your thoughts on what we've talked about today.
Yes, Renu, first of all, I think that it's very important that discussions like this should take place, because just as it is essential to have gender sensitization in classrooms and in schools, it is necessary that at every stage of our lives and at every age, people should constantly be listening to discussions like this, because especially in places in communities where there is gender segregation, it is conversations like this that will at least plant the seed of a thought in people's minds. Dr. Amitabh said, I don't know if I misunderstood him when he said that rape is not about gender. I want to say that when we talk about the rape of women, we are not at all denying that men and boys get raped. But even the rape of men and boys is actually a factor in patriarchy, because the shaming of boys and men who want to speak up is also very patriarchal, because they are told that they are not man enough if they allowed themselves to be raped. What can we do as a solution? There is no quick fix. But yes, we should have more discussions like this, education. And I think we must offer each other solidarity. The solidarity that women offer each other, which gives them the strength to speak up, is hugely important. And one of the things that has struck me in the past decade as I've been studying this subject is that there is so much commonality in sexual violence across countries. In 2012, there was this gang rape that took place in Delhi on a Delhi bus, and it became very high profile across the world. It led to anti-rape protests across India, which were covered widely in America also. And around the same time, I read of a rape case in a place called Steubenville in Ohio. And I was reading of the reactions of the people in Steubenville and the American media. And I was so startled, because if you had changed the names and covered changed the color of their skin so that I couldn't see who they were, it was as if it was taking place in India. The prejudice against the young woman. Why was she drinking? Why did she become unconscious? Maybe she had a role to play. There was even a reporter on CNN who's I read about this in a British newspaper. A reporter on CNN who spoke with regret about how the rapists' careers have been affected because poor guys, they were apparently football stars. So I mean, whether it's America or India, of course, we are focusing on South Asia. It's very important because we should not be we should not be silenced we should not be ashamed of these realities and therefore silence ourselves to maintain the country's honor. But it is also shocking that actually across the world, patriarchy operates with with so many similar instruments and weapons. So let us please offer women solidarity, and of course all victims and survivors of sexual violence, including men and boys. There is no competitiveness here. We must not deny the role of race, of caste, of sectarianism in any form, of class divides. We must not deny the fact that very often when rape happens to women from upper classes, they are silenced because the family considers honor even more important than families that are disadvantaged and underprivileged in society. But platforms like this are actually enablers. They open up discussions further. And I think what you're doing over here is very important.
Thank you. Thank you so much for that. Rajyasree?
Yeah, so just taking off from what Anna said, this thing of repressing the news of these crimes, that needs to stop. And I think it's very important that this discussion is happening in the States, because I've seen this very often, and across, you see it in the media, you see it on social media, that don't say anything negative about India. But if something is happening, you need to bring it out, because only when you discuss will change take place. Another point that you have to understand, it is about power, whether it is someone who has lived his life being repressed. And I would strongly recommend everyone read Jason Burke's article, which he had written in The Guardian on the five rapists in the 2012 gang rape, the backgrounds that they came from. And it wasn't a justification for what they did, but you understand what disparate backgrounds can do to people. The problem in India is because we have so much social, economic, gender disparity, people, and it's why there are crimes also, as in there are thefts, robberies, and so on, because there's so much economic disparity. A lot of these people who commit rape have never seen women outside the kitchen. Their own mothers cover their faces with a ghungat and walk around. Suddenly they've come to a big city and they see women walking around with their faces uncovered, chatting. They can't wrap their heads around it. It's not an excuse, but it's why we need to make sure that this social disparity slowly starts diminishing. In the States, you see the same power play where we've seen it with the Brock Turner case, which was a college case. Please read up on it, which was the girl was accused of why was she drunk? Why did she pass out? That means that she should get raped.
That's a local big case for us.
Yeah. And it's a horrific case that this boy in Stanford did this. And US gymnastics, that Dr. Larry Nassar, the amount of women gymnasts who he assaulted, and it just kept, and you see how it was covered up, how women helped cover up this crime that was taking place. And please do not deny caste, that there's a caste problem in this country. It is reprehensible that in 2020 there's a caste problem in that caste exists, that people are discussing it and saying that, oh, someone is Dalit, that it takes place, crimes take place, and you have to accept it. And as the media, and I address it to all the people who are in the media from India over here, do not deny it and do not claim that we do not sensationalize. I know I don't, and maybe Anna doesn't at all, but the media as a whole sensationalizes these crimes. They pick on the victims system. We have seen this happening on Republic TV, where the Hathras, the girl who has now died, they've said it's all just rubbish. She's made it up. And do not use the media, should not be amplifying government conspiracy theories.
Thank you.
There's no independence that we have, and just because we are a newspaper and the news channel is saying something, we are responsible for what is being said. People are watching these news channels and thinking, oh, this must be the truth. This one did not kill himself. This girl did not get raped. There is no caste in the world.
We need to, yeah. Thank you so
and
much.
I just want to one thing say that our redressal systems need to be made quicker and smoother. People will come up and complain if they think they won't get harassed in the process. And please get people with criminal records in Parliament out of Parliament. Simple as that.
Second that one.
Good one.
Tanya, over to you. Thank you so much. Tanya, over to you. Please remember, just 2 minutes, guys. We do need to wrap up. So, yes.
Sorry about that.
I think building on from what Dr. Mitra has said, and I think that's going to stick with me, and you've repeatedly said it, sir, on the panel, that it's a number of causes that leads to an offense like this. So we must not undermine, of course, the caste, creed, religion, or the class divide that we're talking about. But my only perspective here is we are living in the 21st century, and it is extremely redundant to focus on something like caste at this point in time, especially the privileged, so to speak, folks like us who have the power, who work in the media. I think should refrain from building on these narratives while at the same time not ignoring it. But we have to refrain from building on it because it takes away from the root cause of the problem. And we've been running around this whole thing for such a long time. I think Annaman said something about rape 26 years ago. I was very little actually at that time, but yeah. So what has changed? 26 years later, Nirbhaya case happened, Hathras case happened. So I think life is all about perspectives. You've got to change your perspective. You've got to treat your daughters right. You've got to treat your sons right, and you have to evolve. If you see a lot of people still stuck to the old narratives, I think you can be the change maker and you can kickstart that change. And I think that's what us millennials at this point in time are trying to do here in India. Thank you.
Thank you. That reminds me of the quote, be the change you want to see. So, Dr. Mitra.
Thank you.
Okay, I think very few things I want to say. First is that it's important to be objective in this area. I mean, high emotions take over, and we use language which is metaphorical, which can be very symbolic, but I understand the feelings behind that, but we need to be objective. That's very important, because then only we will be able to deal with that. And we have to keep our feelings, our emotions under control. And I have had to do that in the hundreds of cases that I have seen. I have carried dead bodies of children sexually assaulted, thrown, and then investigate and find out. And you have to keep your feelings under check, find out what is the fact, whether it is a caste, whether caste is there or not, or it's there. Sexual assault happens across all age groups, across all religions, across all castes. So it is not that I have seen that there is any excess of or preponderance of one over another. Second, maybe I should say that we carried out researches with sexual offenders and on sexual victims who face sexual assault. It's a research study, and it's going to come out soon as a book. One major publisher has accepted, and it talks of it's a quantitative and qualitative study that we did. For example, we talked about Dalit cases. One of the interesting and poignant, I would say, observation that it throws is that depending upon the same parameters across the Dalit and non-Dalit category, the Dalit women score high on many parameters, right? Which means that the trauma of rape is higher for Dalit women. We checked and we rechecked, our entire team rechecked, and we found that the only possible reason for that is that trauma for Dalits is transgenerational. It's the intergenerational trauma that kind of becomes part of the sexual assault trauma, and there have to be similarly methods devised to deal with this particular trauma, which is different, though no less than the trauma, say, of a city girl who faces sexual assault. There is no difference, but trauma has also its shade. It has also a wide spectrum on which it should be measured, assessed, and which is a very important factor for the sentencing process, for changing the mind of judges. And I have lectured in many times in the National Judicial Academy and talked to judges, and they say, oh, I wish I had known this at the beginning of my career. So scientific evidence, research evidence, psychological evidence will go a long way in changing the lawmakers. So that's what I want to say. And yes, last thing, we need to have many more discussions. Thank you.
Thank you so much, and good luck on the book. Thank you. Dr. Mohan.
Thank you so much, Renu. There's so much to talk about, and I know you are racing against time. So I'll
racing to the beach.
Compliments to Renu, you and Mira, the way you have steered us today, and very, very relevant and sensitive topic. And compliments to Radio Zindagi for taking such relevant issues. Few things I would like to point out. Number one, stop being silent, because that is, and that's my appeal to all the people, because your silence is an encouragement to the people whom you need not encourage. So stop being silent. That's number one. Number two, stop feeling guilty, because you have suffered an accident, and do not generalize an accident as a lifetime trauma. Because we have seen that even if we come out of it from phase one, phase two, but then the scars remain lifelong. Maybe it's some other time we'll go into the psyche and what the sufferer goes through. So stop being silent, stop feeling guilty, because you are not guilty. You are the one who's survivor. You are the winner. And stop listening to people. Stop listening, because there's no one other than you who's more important than in your life, because everyone else is important because they are connected to you, and so do not give others more important than your own self, than your own identity, because that's something that's going to take you out of that phase. Because accident never forewarns. Rape hoga, hame nahi pata tha, accident ho gaya. But then what is going to happen thereafter? You can control your psyche. You can realize your own power. You have that strength within you. Do not allow that to diminish, because that is going to A, help you come out of it, B, get that criminal be taken care of by the appropriate action and the measures by the law.
Thank you so much, Dr. Mohan. And Swati.
Hi. Thanks, Renu, for having me. So quickly, just to say that when I said about not commenting, I meant it for the cases that are pending. Okay, and the reason is, when we write, and we have to write, and we do write in the media about cases of rape against minors and women, heinous rapes, and they have to be written because these are crimes against society. And of course, it's a duty of what's law and order? What's the government's role essentially? Is to ensure that there is some amount of safety in society, and I can walk free, my daughter can walk free, my sister can walk free, my mother, whoever, without having a rapist lurking around the corner. So it has to be written. And when we write it, that brings the transparency by itself. When you write it without prejudging, focusing on what's happening, the status of the investigation, the court, the trial, you're doing your role and the duty that is essentially cast on you. Anyway, having said that, I'll just quickly read out a para to you from what the courts have said. When I said a little while ago about sensitivity, these matters do require sensitivity, which is often lacking. Again, a lot of lawyers are male. So it's all about how you raise your male child. And I have a son. I think hopefully I am perhaps, one will know in future whether I'm doing a good job or not. The idea is to say that, hey, you have to treat a woman right. And that should be ingrained in a boy, in your child, in your son, right from the time he's a toddler. Just to add to what Tanya said, and when she's also beautifully put it, that, she's going to raise her child when she has one with gender neutrality. Okay, so just quickly coming back to what has courts held and why is a woman's statement so important in a rape case to ensure that women do come out and do file complaints about rape. The courts have said that, a woman's statement, even if there's no other corroborative, in a sense, evidence, the woman's statement, if you find it truthful enough, reliable, is enough to secure a conviction, without, like I said, if it's found reliable again. The courts, I'll just quote you from here, the courts shoulder a great responsibility while trying an accused on charges of rape. They must deal with such cases with utmost sensitivity. So courts have time and again said this. Has it percolated down to the trial courts? Sometimes yes, sometimes not. The court should examine the broader probabilities of a case and not get swayed by minor contradictions and insignificant discrepancies, which is something often that the defense counsels prey on. They want to raise this confusion, to put the woman in an uncomfortable situation. Mm-hmm. And so these are all tactics, but the courts have to sort of watch out for these and play a role with greater sensitivity. Courts also have to be sensitive and, to ensure that justice is done without sort of giving into some little. I could go on this judgment, how the courts must also, while evaluating evidence, remain alive to the fact that in a case of rape, no self-respecting woman, this was what was said way back in '96, but maybe it stands good even today, would come forward in a court just to make a humiliating statement against her own honor, and file a false case of rape. So the general principle and general understanding in courts is that a woman won't really say that, hey, I've been raped, just to falsely accuse a person. Because Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for that, Swati. Thank you so much. And Mira, my partner in crime, I know you're very passionate about this as well. What are your thoughts on this? Because I definitely know that we're going to have to bring this show back and continue this discussion. This cannot stop here.
This cannot stop, Renu. You're so right. You're so right. First of all, thank you all for being here. I know it's 2 a.m. in India and you all are here discussing a very, very, very important issue. So thank you for doing that. That's the first and foremost thing. The second thing, what I realized here, Swati, what I realized here is that whatever you guys have said, the underlying factor remains that rape is about power play. It's about the need for a person to show another person, man, woman, child, that he's more powerful in some way, because probably that person doesn't like the way the other person is behaving, or for some reason thinks it's a transgression or some other psychological reason. Now that we've come to that reason, what I really want to go ahead from here and redefine is definitions like honor. Why is it the woman's job to protect honor? How is getting raped and honor associated with each other? There has been a violation of somebody's will. Violation of somebody's will should not be connected to the honor of society, family, and greater community. I'm sorry, but that burden cannot be placed upon women. So we need to start redefining these words that these are primitive. So I believe the society, us, ourselves, and the words we use and how we think of things has to change. And it needs to start with us first.
Thank you so much. And on that note, thank you, everybody. I'm going to leave you with one thought. And my thought is, our lives begin to end the day we become silent about things that matter. So for all those who are so active on social media, I really don't care if, Bollywood, somebody smoking weed. I'm not interested to know about what your thoughts are on all these conspiracies. This is the issue I'm more concerned about, because at the end of the day, folks, we all come from a woman. And we have to remember that. And we have a responsibility to every woman on this planet to be able to make sure that this crisis ends and ends quickly. Thank you very much to all our panelists. Thank you, Raju Zindagi. And thank you for staying up. And we will definitely have this discussion again. See you all.
Thank you. Thank you, Renu and Mira.
Bye-bye, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.